We have been living in Victoria since August 15th of 1970, so we have been here almost 50 years now, and I've been a member of this parish since that time.
I was a teacher next door at the elementary school, and I was coming over, and this lady got out of her car and she said, "What is this? I just found this in the middle of nowhere. Where did this come from?" She was just amazed.
Tourists would come in and ask me, what in the world is a structure like this doing in a small community like this?
It is just a beautiful edifice, and to come in and just sit when you're all alone and sit here and just pray and think and thank God for everything.
And while it's beautiful and all, it's really important in what it is, what it stands for, and how it appeals to people.
I was born and raised here in Victoria in 1937, and then I moved away from here in 1956, and then I came back to Victoria in 1970, and that's when I really started appreciating this church, being away from it and then coming back and seeing the beauty and realizing what a big, nice, beautiful church it really is.
Okay, you're asking my age now. I have been here 81 years and 5 months.
Well, I was born and raised here, so 80 years. For approximately 15 years, I lived in Kansas City, and then had to come back here.
I was stationed here as pastor. That would have been probably in the 90s, and I was here for about 6 years, stationed here. I didn't ask for the job, and I didn't expect it, but it was a good job while I was here. The people are very cooperative. Of course, they love the church. And anything you do for the church, you can usually get their backing.
The Volga Germans who came and settled this area in 1875 was their first settlers here. The most important thing to them, other than their family, was their religion and their church.
The priests that first served us here, they were priests that came from in the Bavarian area of Germany, and were German-speaking. Remember, our people, when they migrated from Russia to here, they spoke no English. They spoke no English. So they needed ministers who would be able to speak German to them. Their first concern was to have a place of worship for them. So they erected a crucifix in the center of the little community of Herzog, and as their gathering place where they gather to pray their rosaries and sing spiritual hymns. And, obviously they wanted a church badly. So as the number of immigrants increased, so did the need and a desire to have a church.
And it was our forefathers that their faith was everything. This is the first thing they wanted to do.
They established some very meaningful goals when they built this particular structure. First of all, they wanted a beautiful house of God. And secondly, they wanted a structure that would last. And then and very importantly to them, they wanted a structure that would seat all the parishioners in the parish. I think with history, they accomplished all of those goals very well, because we are here about 120 years later now, and we're still sitting in the same structure that they constructed, and it is a beautiful house of God. As you look around here, you see that the church has the basic structure is of limestone, and that limestone was quarried about 7 miles away from here, as the crow flies, out by the little town of Vincent, Kansas, where we also have the Pearl of the Prairie, the little satellite church out there.
first thing they had to do was had horse-drawn scrapers to remove 2 to 3 feet of earth from the formation of limestone, which is 8 inches, almost perfectly. The thickness of it is 8 inches. And in order to break that away from the formation, they had to drill holes every 10 to 12 inches apart. First of all, they used a string line to get the straight line and drill a hole along that line every 10 inches apart. And then they dropped a feather and a wedge into the hole and tapped it with a hammer, and then as more pressure was applied, that would break away from the formation in a straight line. And if you look outside, there are holes, you can see half of a hole that's in the limestone now.
The parishioners themselves quarried that stone. Each parishioner was required to haul in 6 wagon loads, those were grain wagon loads of stone, and each parishioner over 12 years old was required to come up with $45 per year to build the structure, and that's the way the church was financed.
They spent really any fortune they had to build this church, but I never heard any family ever say that it was a waste. I think they feel that it was all worth it, and they're proud of that they showed the interest they had in the faith and their love for the church itself.
I've always thought, as I look around this structure, that the only way they were able to do that and build this marvelous structure was with the help of God. Without that, they would have never got it done.
Years ago, in order to fund the church, they would have an auction of the pews, and it was the first Sunday after New Year's that you would go to, the gentleman would come in and they'd have an auctioneer and they'd auction off the pews, and it started like about $5 a pew, and there was kind of a competition because people wanted certain pews. Well, I can remember the time when my dad came home and said, yes, we got our pew again. I had to bid pretty high, but we got it. And that pew is pew 8, and we still all sit in pew 8.
A Good Friday during Lent, that was horrible for a child, because we would come to church at 12 noon and not leave till 3, because we had to spend the 3 hours in church. And there were sometimes we would come into the church and it would be beautiful outside and be blizzarding when we went out. And so as a child, imagine sitting in church for 3 hours. It seemed like an eternity.
It's a place for us to do our, now I'm going to use quotes, quote, spiritual work, end quote. And that is, we have a place to come that has a beautiful environment with the windows, the statues, the decor. When I say spiritual work, we come because we want to pray for people who have asked for our prayers, or family members. We also want to tell our worries to God and ask for our temporal needs, as well as give thanks and praise for His blessings. Now, we don't necessarily need all this environment. It's nice to have, but it's mainly a place for us to come to pray and attend the Eucharist. So I think that's the legacy that remains with the majority of the people.
Well, as far as the parishioners go, and any other, a lot of people living in this area, it's a symbol of what's most important in their lives, their faith, what they believe in, and that's why you get good crowds here on Sunday. The whole town goes to church here if they're Catholic on Sunday. That's always been the custom. It just stands for what the people believe in, what they consider important, and what they're willing to maintain.
You know, it's home. It's home, and I'm sure we don't appreciate it. But I was baptized in this church, and we were married in this church, and my parents' funerals were in this church, and lots of memories.
My husband and I, Bob, we've been here since 1977. We've been married, it will be 57 years in July.
I got married here. Our children were all baptized here. And our oldest daughter got married in this church. So it's a very meaningful place for me.
The reason it's a big part of my life is my wife. I wouldn't even be here in this church today if it wasn't for my wife. She is from this area. So when we were married in 1960, we were married right up here at this, right there on those steps in 1960. So that was a very good and big part of my life. And that's been almost 59 years ago now today, and June 18th it will be. My children were baptized here in this church, and then of course they were confirmed here, and so we've had a lot of history, family history in this church, and that's been important to me.
It means everything to me. I can just sit here now and look around and see those beautiful windows. And I will say, having been born here, raised here, my family, we took it for granted that we had such a beautiful edifice here in this small community. It's only now that I really appreciate what we have. I come from a family of, my grandparents were married here, my parents were married here, my siblings all were married here. I have 5 children, they were all married here. So I am feeling, and I have 2 grandchildren that were married here already. So, and great-grandchildren. And I can't imagine being without it. It takes my breath away, even after 81 years. It's a beautiful place. We're very proud of it, needless to say.
Even if the people don't know anything about the history of the church or anything about art, they love it because it stands for their faith, and they know it's something unusual when you walk in and see the church. It won't change very much in the years to come.